All right, good morning. I think I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And for those of you that hadn't noticed before, I'm not Dr. Doig, so I will do my best to muddle through this in his absence. I think first off, we'll go ahead and do roll call attendance. I know Gary told me that Virgil Bremer and Dr. Ragland are going to be virtual today.
Okay, Ashley Armstrong. Keith Beard.
Aye.
Tim Rice.
Aye.
Greg Bowers.
Aye.
Tracy Gillespie.
Aye.
Jeff Hall.
Aye.
Ty Harberger.
Aye.
And Dr. Ragland.
Aye.
And Virgil Bremer. He may be on later. And then to Dr. Doig.
I, David Harden, am here, so. All right. We'll, I think, go ahead and get started off with recognition of years of service. Next, we'll move on to approval of the October meeting minutes. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to read over them. Do I have any additions, corrections, or deletions to the minutes as they were mailed out to everyone? With that, I'll entertain motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes of the October 14th, 2025 meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, Gary, if you'll be so kind as to call the roll.
Dr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Keith Beard.
Aye.
Tim Rice.
Aye.
Greg Bowers.
Aye.
Dr. Gillespie.
Aye.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Ty Harberger.
Aye.
David Harden.
Aye.
And Dr. Ragland.
Aye.
And Virgil Bremer.
Okay. Moving right along down the agenda, Dr. Hendricks, thank you for joining us. If you would, please feel good to give us your report.
Good morning. I'll be brief. This is mostly just updates on things you already are aware of. So I start off with a brief budget summary like I do most quarters. And you can see there's a positive trend. We're 12% up on our sales and services year to date. So always glad to see that positive trend. So facilities wise, our Reed Lab in West Lafayette has been undergoing the major project you're familiar with. So our incinerator replacement is done. So we have a new incinerator, it's working well, that part is complete. We are now in phase 2, which is the replacement of our walk-in cooler. And that completion date is estimated to be later this spring, March, somewhere in there. So anyway, moving forward on that, so that's exciting. I've also mentioned to you, we're doing a project with Hanover Research. So this is a third party that comes in to assess data related to our industry, essentially. So they're taking a broad assessment of our services, how we're meeting the needs of the state. And this has been broken down into these 3 parts. So they've completed the market analysis, the competitor benchmarking, and we're just now moving into return on investment studies, one way to call it. And this is going to be not only kind of the general big picture, but also focused on what it would, what a new facility would add. So try to see if we have some data that can support construction of a new lab. So we're going to be digging deep into that aspect through that project. So I look forward to actually having data to be able to share with you from that report once it's complete. Pretty significant update for you guys on our LIMS replacement. Since I last saw you guys, we have canceled our contract with our originally selected vendor. Our Purdue project team had multiple concerns regarding the pace of implementation and the readiness of the software product itself. So we are currently going back to the original vendors we interacted with during the request for proposals information part of that exploration. We have a couple of demos scheduled just to kind of refresh our knowledge of the product and also any updates they have made since we did the demos, because it's been about 2 years since that happened. And we really, our goal is to be under a new contract by the end of February, so we can keep this moving as well. So that was a little twist for you there, but definitely the right decision, and we will keep moving forward. Piggybacking on the LIMS replacement, so another aspect of our software is our quality management software. So this handles our staff training records, non-conformances, corrective actions, equipment, data. So that's essential to our accreditation. So we are including that as part of the bigger LIMS replacement. And so we're going with a different vendor that specializes in quality management software. And we've selected one, and hopefully we'll get that going in the spring. I think that will be a lot faster process to get that on board than the LIMS. So we didn't want to delay that since the LIMS is delayed. So we're moving forward with that hand in hand under the same project umbrella. And then lastly, I just have, as always, kind of a list of our positions. We had a handful of faculty positions open up this year. So you're familiar with the poultry diagnostician position. That search is in progress, as well as the molecular position. Those hopefully both will be closed out fairly soon. I hope that the next time I see you, I can give you a final report on that. We are waiting for this next one to be posted. It's the head of our serology virology lab. We also call it immunodiagnostics. You may have heard that term. And the faculty in that position left the state. And so we have reworked the job description so that that person would also be a pathologist, because that would address some needs on our pathology team for more support there. So we will see who applies and move forward with that as soon as it gets posted, and have a couple of tech positions open. And I also just want to mention to you that we have a search for the department head for comparative pathobiology. So that's our academic home for all of our faculty in the ABDL. And I'm also the interim head until we fill that. So hopefully that will move swiftly as well. That's all I have for today. Any questions for me?
Dr. Hendricks, the canceled LIMS contract, was that any dollars that were out of, that were spent, that we didn't get good the services for, or was it clean break?
To be determined. The Purdue Contracting is handling that side of things, but we're told that they can bill us for the time they've already put into it. So I've not yet received a bill.
I guess I have a question about the work that's being done with Hanover. You described that you're looking to have the last part of that, the ROI assessment, done by June. What do you feel like will be the next steps beyond that, as we think about where we will be at that point in time in regards to the General Assembly? Next year will be, budget year, biennial. So will we have something that we can take to the legislature at that point in time, saying, here is our ask?
Great question. And yes, that is the big picture thing here. Because going back in time, looking at the third party work we've done, we had our, and get them in order. We had our external review from Bruce Akey, you may remember, a few years ago. And then we did a strategic plan that was facilitated by an external individual. We did the Perkins and Will study, specifically looking at facilities and our options for rebuilding versus renovating. And then this is kind of our last piece of the big puzzle to say, okay, well, how does this integrate into the needs of our stakeholders, and what's the return on that investment? So this hopefully will be that last piece of information that we put together in that app. And we've emphasized that to Hanover as well. Like, in addition to their big report, they need to give us a brief summary with the high points, with a focus on the people who would be reading this would be the decision makers.
And if it operates as it did the last budget cycle, we would expect budget instructions to agencies around May with the deadline to submit ask by August.
Okay.
Roughly.
And we're mindful of that timeline as we move through this.
Any other questions for Dr. Hendricks? Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
report. All right, moving on to me.
Just want to mention a couple of items. Trade show seasons are wrapped about, so stop and see through any of the trade shows that we've been to lately. Also, the annual report is on your seat. That's available now. We finished it up. So basically, we've got a little bit different format this year, but it tells the story of what we've been doing. And so those are available if you have meetings or such that you need that. We'll get you guys copies over there shortly. So as well, also just wanted to point out one other item, first item on my report about working with the Management Performance Hub. With the veterinary practice finder that is still set to go live the end of this month, so we're kind of we're hoping that happens soon, and we're hoping to kick it off at the Crossroads Veterinary Conference. So I'm really pleased. We've had about 215-ish practices sign up to be part of that, so I at least feel like we have a good mass there. My big fear was we'd have 12 sign up and it wouldn't have a lot of value, but it looks great in the demos that we've seen so far. Happy to take any questions if anybody has anything. All right. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Denise. All right. Gary, I guess you're up with Chief of Staff report.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. A couple items from my report that I want to highlight. I'll start with the second page. You may have seen when I send you emails that now at the bottom of all of our signatures, we have an opportunity to provide feedback. I think we also have something on our website. We don't get a lot of response to that, but we do get some, and so I wanted to share with you. And these are unedited, so these are feedback, survey feedback that we've received from the general public, just because they decided to provide some feedback to us. So we appreciate that, and wanted you to see the positive comments that it's getting by providing a good service to Hoosiers. And I think since I've sent you this, we got one more similar type of feedback. So really proud of that. Personnel-wise, I think I mentioned this in my report here, but in 2025 we had about 15% of the agency's headcount turnover, just because of normal attrition for the most part, through retirements. We did have some people who delayed retirement to take advantage of the compensation adjustments that were a few years ago. So then it's now kind of they're in a place where they feel comfortable retiring. So that if you add that to what we call a normal retirement, it's kind of all added up. You'll know more about that with some of the other reports, particularly affecting operations. And as you can see from that, it takes about 45 days on average to fill a position, depending on what that is. It can take longer. Veterinarians take a lot longer to fill than some of the other positions. So, as an example, as the animal programs divisional report, we were able to veterinary position so they could do their retirement. Sarah Simpson was doing our legislative work as a general counsel, and while we're between general counsels now, we're working in legislation. With help of so I'll give you kind of a brief rundown of the bills that have been introduced in this session. We're keeping an eye on as an agency. There's two I'll start with because they specifically involve this board. We have Senate Bill 135. This deals with alkaline hydrolysis, using alkaline hydrolysis to dispose of animal remains, animal carcasses. The bill would require, well, one, it would basically affects IDEM and BOA. It requires IDEM to adopt rules related to wastewater discharge for alkaline hydrolysis chambers used to dispose of animals, and provide some other parameters for IDEM in that regard. It states explicitly, for the Board of Animal Health, it states explicitly in statute that if someone is operating a business to dispose of animal remains via burial, incineration, rendering, composting, or alkaline hydrolysis, or any other method approved by the board, they would need a disposal plant license. The board is already operating that way through interpretation and rulemaking, but this would put it in statutes, so if anything, commercial facilities necessarily doing that at the moment. We do have one facility that I guess I would describe it as a biological digestion, chemical digestion facility, dealing with poultry. I don't know if we have any chemical facilities at the moment, but this would, so apparently someone's interested because they have a bill. And like I said, our current rules would already allow for this, but this would put it in the statute and provide a little more clarity on that. The only difference, I think, from what currently is in the board rules is it would require the board to adopt some rules, and it specifically mentions the requirements for operator training and emergency shutdown and containment procedures. So those two items are not in the current bill rules. So we're keeping an eye on that. It's not been scheduled for a hearing yet. See if that moves. House Bill 1024 would establish a state-based veterinary student loan repayment program, and the Board of Animal Health would be the agency to administer that. So it would allow, one, it would establish a fund that could be funded by appropriation or gift or request or grant. And then the board would specifically be responsible for doing rulemaking to flesh out the details of the program, including defining essential services. Doing so, the board could do that in a number of different ways. You could do that by geography, services. These areas are underserved, and therefore, or it could be by type of practice, food animal versus another type of practice, or others. So the board would have rulemaking authority to kind of define those parameters, and then some of the details of the program in terms of getting maximum amount of the award, how many years for the award. There's no appropriation request with the bill. Obviously, this is not a budget session, so there's no money with it, but it would establish the program, ask the board to adopt rules, flesh out the program, and then if it became available, I would approve a donation, grant, or future appropriation. The bill passed the first committee in the House, the Ag Committee, and then it's been assigned to Ways and Means, but not scheduled for a hearing. Any questions on that one? Do that very quickly.
Let's see. Gary, last year, because they were worried about appropriations, the bill that was similar to 1024, died. House Ways and Means. Is it worth reaching out to Chairman Thompson to hopefully try and make sure this doesn't get hung up there?
I do not have any information about where it currently stands, other than it's been assigned. So I don't know. The author is Representative Ellsworth during the House Ag Committee. I don't know whether he's talked to Ways and Means folks yet or not. This is obviously it's not an agency bill. It impacts the agencies, but it's not an agency bill, so I'm not directly involved. Shepherd it through the system. So we were available for questions during the hearing. We got extra questions, but I wasn't surprised that it was coming to the city, even though it doesn't ask for an appropriation. It suggests it might be asked to one in the next session. So that alone might make some people cautious on it. I don't know. It's definitely so that's the status of that one. Okay. The other items we're keeping an eye on, there's a couple of different veterinary related bills for the Board of Veterinary Medicine. And Senate Bill 56 is a bill that would clean up some of the statutory language and clarify what it takes to get a reciprocal license, someone coming from out of state. Currently, there's some old language in there suggests that that person would need to practice in another state for 5 years before they can come get a license in Indiana without taking the exam. It hasn't been how the board has been operating, but the language is still there, so this would delete that 5-year requirement. That bill is passed through the Senate without any negative votes and is Let's see, there is a bill, it's Bill 1014, dealing with sonography, that would require only certain licensed professionals be able to do that, did not include veterinarians. Don't know if the bill's going to get a hearing, but I think it's an oversight on that part. Yeah, I think there is a bill that require research animals when they're done with their research to be adopted out if possible. So that says that they should not be adopted out. So it doesn't directly require the Board of Animal Health to do anything, nor directly impact the board, but it is something that's been in the process in the past involving boards. So we're just keeping an eye on it to see if there's any. Don't know if they'll get a hearing yet. It's not been scheduled. It would impact research universities. Research involving animals. House Bill 1220 would prohibit declawing cats. Again, it doesn't directly involve the Board of Animal Health, any type of enforcement, but this is a veterinary related bill, so just keep an eye on it. House Bill 1165 is a bill that makes certain amendments to the state criminal code regarding abuse of animals. The author did provide the agency with a preliminary draft a couple months ago, provide a lot of input. A lot of that input, not all of it. Again, it doesn't directly involve BOA, but BOA, as you know, from our reports, spends a lot of time helping law enforcement evaluate animals. In cases involving, criminal cases involving animals. And so if they start changing the definition of abuse and neglect, results in different outcomes from some of the cases that BOA is involved with. Or just keep an eye on it. That one is scheduled for a hearing later this week. And then there's a couple of, what I'll call local food bills, Bill 1345 and 1424. And they primarily are attempting to define the regulations that apply to folks who are selling at farmers market, roadside stands, selling off the farm, as it relates to the Indiana Department of Health, and local departments of health. However, we keep an eye on it because they usually start touching on the bee inspection rules and laws. And we don't think there's any attempt to change those laws. However, it seems like they sometimes inadvertently propose language that would cause confusion in that area. So we're keeping an eye on that. See what happens. One of the two currently has some language in it. Could be problematic for OA. Again, I think it's unintentional, but that one is good for hearing it. Keep an eye on that. Oh, I almost forgot House Bill, another veterinary bill, House Bill 1061. This would require, in order to establish a veterinary client-patient relationship, would require an in-person exam. So that, in fact, establish a CPR. I don't think that was going to get a hearing. However, the chairman was let us know about that issue. That's an issue the Board of Veterinary Medicine's drafting legislation to revise and revamp the rules. So a lot more discussion on this topic, probably over the next 12 months or so. There's a bill, Senate Bill 282, dealing with compounding pharmacies. We'll assess whether that affects veterinary drugs or not. Don't know on that one. And then House Bill 1003 does not impact the Board of Animal Health. It is a boards and commissions bill. Priority for progress. Consolidating, combining, and eliminating boards and commissions. 57 boards and commissions that are eliminated or consolidated in that bill. That directly impacts the board as far as we can tell. Don't keep an eye on it. Subject matter. A lot of discussion in that area. That's our current list. Obviously, if it's a short session, things are changing very quickly. It's going very fast. Do you have any questions on so far?
Gary, I don't, maybe you're going to address it. I haven't been keeping as up date on it as I should, but I'm not sure whether it's an executive order or whether it's been actually passed, but looking at, not having agencies and boards do continual readoption of rules, but moving those rules into code. Want to know how that would affect the workings of this board, going forward, because obviously things change and it's rulemaking is as cumbersome, is a lot easier than trying to get code updated.
Yeah, there's several different things going on with rulemaking, both through the General Assembly and through executive order, and some effort in the current General Assembly to pass an executive order language improvement statute. And so in terms of how it affects BOA, one, I think this last year we did do a rule readoption. We're working on another one this year, and because those rules now expire 5 years. And so while that's all going on, we're doing that to maintain. And while that's going on, we're also assessing all of the rules to determine if there are any that are no longer necessary or to be revised or to be changed. And so both of those things are happening at the same time. And so we have several rulemaking projects that we need to engage in this year and especially over the next 3 years, because we're also under an executive order that's asking agencies to reduce their total rule count by 25% over the course of 3 years. That's the third thing that's happening all at the same time. And so we're taking it as an opportunity to review all of the bullet board download rules in detail. And so we kind of group those into some that are, obviously we need to maintain that, keep that. We have others that, okay, we don't need that anymore, that can go away. That can go away either by an action of the board to repeal it or just to let it expire. And then we have some that are kind of their own project. And so, for instance, the super AV rules have been around for a long time. They're still relevant, but the program is totally different than it was when it first started because things have changed. And so we need to go through that in detail and say, okay, what do we still need? What does it need to look like now? And so that's its own project. And so for some of those, we may end up, at the same time we're going through and doing that, we may end up readopting it because we're not quite done with rework. And then with all of that, then there's this notion that, if you have rules that have been in place for a long time and haven't been changed, then maybe they should be extended. We're also evaluating that potentially for a bill next year to say, okay, here's those parts of those rules that we think make sense to be extended. So yeah, there's a lot of activity in rules making. At the same time, the process for adopting rules has changed. Keep changing. And so there's a lot more involved with that in terms of analysis. Keep seeing the documents that Sarah put together, pages of analysis that cover everything I just talked about, readopting rules, changing rules. And then at the same time, we also have some requests from industry in certain areas to change rules. We may be working on survey rules and so forth this year too. So we're looking forward to all those opportunities.
All without having Sarah here. Sorry.
Yeah, for that. We're working on our general counsel. We hope to have that done. Other than that, I would just mention that we are continuing to work on our database change. So we hope to go live with that sometime. 3 months, somewhere in there. And that's the way we've got. We're kind of to the point where we can start making those decisions, but we want it to be at a point where it's going to work well for us before we pull that trigger. That's a big lift for the agency. It's something that we use in pretty much all the programs in some way or another.
Challenging to validate during IDA. So that's what been a little delay on it, having the human resources to get in and make sure it's what we need before we go live.
Certainly. Any other questions for Gary? If not, we'll go ahead and move on to Dr. Woodlane.
Thanks for the opportunity to address you on behalf of the Animal Programs Division. I just have a few things to highlight to you from the full report that you were provided earlier, and then happy to answer any questions that anyone has on anything in that report. wanted to first, before I jump right in, because I always forget to do this, I don't know if anyone noticed, we do have an unfamiliar face in the room, so I do just want to really quickly introduce you to Lauren. She is a 4th-year veterinary student spending 3 weeks with us from Virginia Maryland College of Vet Med, and so has been with us over the past week and will be with us through kind of the end of January-ish timeframe. So Lauren, do you want to say anything just so the board can know a little bit about your background and what you're interested in hopefully doing one day?
So like she said, I'm Lauren. I'm a 4th-year dual degree DVM MPH. Vet school is not my plan in life, and I'm still trying to figure out what that plan is. Unfortunately, graduation's in May, so time is ticking on that. I'll let you guys know if I figure out exactly what I want to do, but in the meantime, I'm having a really great time kind of following some of the vets around and doing different things. So if anyone has anything cool coming up in the next week and a half, let me know. I'd love to be your shadow.
Yeah, so yesterday she spent time on our HiPath AI environmental sampling team, so we're certainly giving her the chance to get integrated into some of that work. And then also has had the chance to be with our dairy inspectors, gonna be with Dr. Sokowski on Friday with meat and poultry, so as well as just the things that come up as we're here in the office. So trying to give her as much experience while she's here for the 3 weeks. But wanted to make sure you guys knew why we had a kind of a familiar face in the room, so. Wonderful. So I always forget to do that. I'm glad I remembered to do that when we started here.
One interesting point about it is, we have state veterinarians moving into deanships, and also too, she came by way of a state veterinarian, Dr. Beth Thompson, who was state veterinarian in Minnesota, went to South Dakota State Veterinarian, is now professor in public and corporate health.
Yeah, she's in one of our tracks.
And now she's in Virginia, and that's where the recommendation, hey, you should look at Indiana to come here for a time period. So there you go, those state veterinarians that run around all
Recruiting.
second
for us.
careers. Third careers.
Well, we're absolutely. All right, so wanted to provide just a couple updates, like I mentioned, and highlight a few things from the full division report. One of those things being just to provide you with a really quick update on the national milk testing strategy. So I know we've talked about this probably ad nauseum every single time we meet, but just wanted to reiterate, we are still participating as a state in the national milk testing strategy program. We have completed 6 rounds, so 6 different monthly rounds of testing of that program, representing a monthly average of about 241 tankers. That it represents about 300 of our grade A dairy farms and about 41 of our Indiana BTUs on a monthly basis. So clearly those numbers shift month to month, but that's kind of the average over the 6 months. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, like, we are absolutely doing this in collaboration with our dairy division. So our dairy inspectors are out there pulling or getting these and collecting these samples. So want to make sure we give credit where credit is due, but certainly from the programmatic standpoint, helping to on this side process those samples and get those that data, compiled for USDA as part of the program. So wanted to bring that up to your attention. Wanted to also mention, so this past year was the first year that we were required from the legislature to perform retail pet store record inspections for retail pet stores that were selling dogs, puppies. And so this year was the first year we were required to do that by law. We did complete 100% of those retail pet store registrant record inspections. So we were able to do that fully, get through all of them. We have currently 22 that are registered with us, 22 different retail pet stores. We're able to get through all of those between July and the end of last year. So that was a bit of a lift with everything else going on within the division and across the state, but certainly just wanted to highlight the effort that went into making that happen. And in addition to that, prior to completing those records inspections, we also had to come up with some documentation, some forms, like those didn't exist when this was put into law. So just wanted to highlight that the effort that went into that part of some of our division work over the past quarter, but really over the past 6 months or so. One other item I wanted to highlight is in the area of equine. So probably not of news to anyone, but maybe it is, so I wanted to highlight it. In November, kind of mid-November time, BOA was notified or alerted to some positive cases nationally, so on a national level, not here locally in Indiana, of EHV1, so equine herpes virus 1, and the equine herpes virus myeloencephalopathy, which of course is a disease of concern in equine. Those cases were diagnosed or were detected at some eventing competitions that brought a lot of horses to them, right? And then those horses came home to all over the nation. So both in Texas and Oklahoma, there were detections and notifications that occurred. We did have horses in Indiana that were at those events that came home. There were approximately 30 horses belonging to 15 different owners across the state that returned after exposure. We've contacted all of them. We've been doing monitoring. We have not diagnosed or had any positive detections, but certainly it is a national event that's occurring kind of in that equine space that I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of. And we continue to follow up on our end here locally with our Indiana horse owners, and of course, keep an eye on those events as they continue to unfold. With that, I have one other item to provide a little bit of information, but before I do that, any questions either related to what I've already mentioned or anything from the report? Okay, excellent. And I did that because this is going to dovetail right into talking about HIPATH, which our avian division is going to cover. But I wanted to just mention certainly a huge highlight and a big amount of effort from our animal programs division team over this past quarter has been supporting our avian division with HIPATH, avian influenza response. And so I want to just acknowledge that. I am not going to talk about the poultry things because Maria is going to, but I did want to mention, in addition, and as part of that HIPATH response, I know we've talked about this in this group before, but we've also been sampling dairies that have been located in close proximity to positive HIPATH detections. We've had several co-located dairies and infected poultry premises, and so, but in addition to that, we've been essentially testing any grade A dairy farms kind of within the infected zone, so like one-ish geographic area of a positive poultry detection. And so that effort, again, in collaboration with our dairy division and really with our dairy inspector up in that area, really appreciate the effort of Dean to get all of that done, because he has sampled for us 80 individual dairy farms. And over those different farms, 195 different tests have been run, because they've been at different times, they've been in different areas, pulled into different control or buffer area, infected zone areas. So really just wanted to mention there's a lot of dairy sampling also occurring as part of our HIPATH response, to ensure that we aren't seeing any kind of shift, from birds to poultry, or sort of, you know what I mean, from cattle to poultry, poultry to cattle, and we have not yet detected any kind of HIPATH AI in our dairy cattle in the state of Indiana. So in addition to the national milk testing strategy that's occurring in the background, we're also doing that as part of our HIPATH response as a more active surveillance tool to make sure that we don't miss it if it happens. So that is all I have to share with you. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'm sure the meat and potatoes of what you want to hear is going to be covered in just a minute. So.
To add to Dr. Whirling's point, so on the national milk testing strategy, that strategy is what found the most recent detection in the new state, which was in Wisconsin. And that detection on whole genomic sequencing was found to be an additional spillover, right? So it's not the B313, which kind of ran through Texas and Idaho and California. This is a new spillover event, which is potentially leading to why we're not seeing it ping pong around like it does. Typically, when we see these new spillovers, they're not quite well adapted to cattle, so we found it, but it doesn't seem to be at this point kind of going around the community like B313 does. We know once it's in a community, it ping pongs around pretty quickly because it is better adapted to that. And I don't know of other states if they've incorporated dairy surveillance into their HIPATH response. I'm guessing not. But we know the density of our dairies, especially our smaller dairies, overlays very, we'll say well, with our density of poultry in northern Indiana, and wanted to be proactive. So if we did have that spillover event, we could take action promptly on it to hopefully prevent kind of the ping ponging. So, and to keep the communities and the industry is kind of at ease of knowing what's happening in each other's industry. Neighborly relations is important too. So we don't have any finger pointing inadvertently, and when we don't know, we see that happen more often, right? That fear of the unknown, well, it must be someone else's fault. So we just wanted to take that extra step in that area. But that's kind of a little bit about the Wisconsin detection. And to date, we don't have what a glide path to an end looks like for the national bug testing strategy. Our current instruction is to keep going. And that's about as much guidance as all the states have right now. It is funded, so USDA is funding it and has kind of renewed that funding mechanism through January of 27, the year. So they
For BOA.
Yeah, for BOA, they've authorized it for another year. So there is fortunately funding tied to it, but they're still working on what the end looks like on the dairy side.
Any other questions for Dr. Whirling? Kelly, thank you. All right. Are you ready? Do you need to take a breath?
No, it's gonna be efficient, I promise.
Okay. Dr. Cooper, if you would, you're.
Thank
Board.
you. See if I can share my screen. Can you see it online? Okay, perfect. All right, so we've had a few cases of avian influenza this fall. So yeah, we're gonna talk about kind of what we've been doing October through the end of the year and continuing to still do. I know, so we have a lot still to do to get, all the farms back. Right? We'll jump right in. So since the first week or second week of October, it was October 9th, we've had 82 commercial farms and 2 small flocks diagnosed with highly pathogenic avian influenza. In terms of the commercial, that was comprised of 44 duck premises, 31 of those meat ducks, 13 of breeder ducks, 36 egg type chickens, so 35 of those were layers. We didn't think we were ever gonna have a pullet, and then we did. And then 2, because there's quite a few pullets up in the region that we're going to talk about, and then 2 commercial broiler farms. And so those 82 commercial farms were up in northeast Indiana, basically in northeast Elkhart County and northwest LaGrange County, and then down into Noble County, so 66 in LaGrange, 13 in Elkhart, and it felt like more in Elkhart, and 3 in Noble County. So and then we had 2 small flock cases that were unrelated genomically and were elsewhere in the state. So Johnson County in central Indiana and Ohio County in southeast Indiana along the river and, does it touch the river? I don't know. Ohio County, yeah, is it all, okay. Part of the south, yes.
I'm pretty sure
so-
she can see it from her house.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were dealing with. Our last case, I think, yeah, there we go. So our first case, like I said, was October 9th. They trickled there for a bit, and then about the second week of November is where we were all questioning our lives and wanted to ask God what gives, because it just was not stopping. And it was around that time too that we were kind of, at least I, and I think others too, were worried about, the reputation of Indiana to stamp out this disease and for the rest of the country to feel confidence and, the health and safety of what we were exporting to them and elsewhere. So, we were getting a little worried, but when you look at it on a map, it's such a small region of Indiana, it's hundreds of miles away from a lot of our southern Indiana poultry. And but we held tough and overcame that hump, and that it has decreased down to a trickle, and then we have not had a case since December 30th, knock on wood. So we hope that we're getting there. Obviously, We suspect that there is still virus in the area. Certainly we continue to find it, or DNR and Wildlife Services have continued to find it in wild birds up in northern Indiana. So it's certainly still out there. As we do environmental sampling, and a lot of these farms would pick up virus, but it so far has all been dead virus. So we have to send a bunch of those that are PCR positive out to the national lab to determine that it's not live virus. So, and of course, the survivability of this virus under the right conditions can be for months, frankly. So we're never out of the woods, no matter where you're at in Indiana, but this area is just such a dense poultry area. We had just so many cases. So we're hoping that that epi curve is done, and that we do not have to make an updated slide. We would be happy to, go back to what years was it, 23 and 24, where we had like 1 or 2 cases. That'd be welcomed. Or no cases, of course, would be best. I'm looking at Ty and he's like, no. So commercial farms that are residing in a control area, at least one control area, a lot of times these farms were in 40 plus control areas. There were 574 farms total. So that, again, are the farms that are quarantined, that have to do at least weekly sampling. If they're moving eggs, whether they were table egg layers or we had, like I said, the breeder ducks up in that area moving hatching eggs. If they want to move them every day, they have to test every day. So quite a large lift for some of these companies that have an awful lot of farms in those zones needing sampled frequently. And then, of course, being under quarantine, if they need to move birds, eggs, or manure on or off of their premises, they have to meet additional biosecurity standards and get an emergency movement permit. So that's a lot of work for 574 farms and for all of us. So if we count both commercial and backyard residing in a control area or surveillance zones, we were dealing with over 1,000 individual farms. So these numbers, we believe, are frankly unprecedented across the country. We are not aware of a more dense region across the nation, maybe even globally, frankly. So certainly there's a lot of discussion among, these companies that are up there. I just talked to one this morning who said, yeah, our headquarters just told us we are not putting any more farms in northern Indiana. And I was like, that could be a good idea. And I know that there's some county-based discussions, not even tonight. I'm guessing that Becky is going to attend for my SPA. So talking about setbacks from confined feeding operations. So so total movement permits generated 5,359, and that product went to 31 different states, eggs or birds. And so to our knowledge, we have not transferred this virus anywhere else in the country. We did or continue to get a few tracebacks from the live bird markets on the East Coast. So a lot of our layers up there, when they depup those spent hens at the end of their productive life, they will go out to the live bird markets in New Jersey, New York, Philadelphia. And so we do have some tracebacks from those farms whereby they diagnosed avian influenza in one of those live bird markets, but then they don't know exactly which birds. And so they kind of have to trace back to anywhere that could have brought a lot of birds in. And so those tracebacks end up going to numerous states. So at this point, and they will do genomics, and so we'll have a better idea if we did end up spreading this disease. But all of those movements out to the live bird market, they're pretty strict in that they have to have same-day testing, and it's more pools than we would tests than we would normally require for other types of movements. So basically, these guys sample early in the morning, the day of, get results back. We have them rushed at Purdue to get early sample results back so that they can load out and basically arrive within a 24-hour time frame to the live bird market. And all of our cases, they weren't showing any clinical signs. They have those negative tests. We have no reason to believe that they were the cause for spread, but we also know they could be incubating disease and we would have no idea. So it's always possible. We like to pride ourselves on not spreading the disease anywhere, and we have no previous knowledge in previous outbreaks that we've done. So, and hopefully that'll be the case here as well. So you might remember the BCAP audits, the Biosecurity Compliance Audit Program. These are the audits that have to take place if you're going to place birds into a control area. And we had an awful lot of placements, largely because of the short-lived nature of ducks and broilers. So when they go to slaughter at 40 days, they're constantly, I mean, they'll raise, 6 flocks a year or more. And so, when we have a 3-month outbreak, if there's hundreds of them up there, you can bet that we're gonna have a lot of them that are going to need to be placed. And that's, the amount of placements that occurred was still down significantly from what they would have placed in normal times. So, companies are strategically saying, this is a really hot area right now, we're not gonna, place ducklings or chicks at this location. So there was a substantial decrease, but it still felt like it was a ton, and I'm sure that's true for Dr. Kopp and also Chelsea Leatherman, who did a lot of these audits. So that's one instance where you have to do a BCAP audit. The other is when a previously infected farm is going to restock. They have to pass that same audit before they restock. So the ones that are, the audits that are for those control area placements are done on paper and via FaceTime, the actual audit where you follow either a flock tech or a grower around their farm and verify numerous items. And then the ones that are conducted for restocking purposes for previously infected farms, those are done in person. There's no birds in that building. They've just cleaned up the farm, and we try to do those around the same time that we go in and do environmental samples to confirm they're clean. So the total number of those, and gosh, it's just a mountain of work that goes into each one of these, frankly, for all involved. And the total completed or currently in process is 303. And I meant to pull a map. Indiana has conducted more of the USDA biosecurity assessments than any other state in the country now, by quite a bit. We were, I think, 4th behind Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Iowa, but now we are shining at number 1. I'm not sure that we were looking to be number 1 in that, but we are. So, and that includes not just these BCAP audits, but also voluntary audits. There's some wildlife variety ones where they have folks with wildlife knowledge come out and assess structures and the environment, those types of things. And then there are voluntary BCAPs, which go under a different acronym that you don't need to know. But so
in the nation, we've comprised 32% of the BCAPs against all the other states.
Yeah, it's wild. So that has been keeping several on our staff busy as well, and the companies for sure. Dr. Worley mentioned that we have 80 individual dairies that have been sampled at numerous different times, depending on their location, what zones they were in. And then Dr. Bowen at the ADDL had pulled this figure. So this is just avian PCR tests, so it doesn't include all of the national milk testing strategy or this dairy outbreak surveillance, but just the avian PCR test as part of the outbreak from October through December, 16,083 PCR tests. So the lab's been pretty busy too. They have not let us down. We appreciate everything that you all have done. Never did we doubt one test result. Everything that was positive, it made sense it was positive, and nothing, vice versa. So everything just went really smoothly from afar. I'm sure that there was plenty of chaos during some of the height of it, but it all went very smoothly from our standpoint. So thank you. This is what 82 control areas looks like. This is supposed to be intentionally vague, so you really can't tell exactly what all the dots mean and such. But that's what it looks like. And so helping farmers and companies understand what all zones they're in and how that changed on a regular basis and what they needed to do because of those zones. And, if they're in that inner control area or that infected zone, things change for them there as well. So communication and just keeping everyone up to date was definitely a full-time job as all of these overlapped. I would have been happy to just say all of those dots, you just have to sample every week. Everyone's quarantined and you have to do this. And honestly, it was not a bad idea at one point because almost all of them were in a control area. But the way, as we start to meet milestones of the incident, like it would be hard to revert back to kind of dropping individual control areas if we made it all one big zone. So that would have became difficult, even if it would have been nice for the time being. Genomic analysis, so everything was the H5N1 subtype, which has been 99+% of the outbreak since 2022. There have been some H5N2 cases, a couple in Minnesota maybe, does that sound right? Okay. Sorry, Minnesota, that's wrong. The genotype has all been D11, which is the predominant genotype being diagnosed in both wild and domestic birds across all 4 flyways right now. So we're basically just like everyone else. The initial introductions in LaGrange County and Elkhart County, they kind of came one after another, and those were started out kind of on and continued on distinct branches of the phylogenetic tree, but they were still very closely linked. And so while those initial 2, could have been and likely were separate introductions, everything from there on out was common source or lateral transmission. So, you can think of that as community spread, whether that's, people, equipment, rodents, wind. We definitely feel like there is an airborne or dust spread component to all of this that's probable. There have been very limited studies on how far the virus may be able to travel and in what quantities. But there were some cases that as we explored some of the genomics, and that's the SNP chart that I have up there, and we don't expect anyone to be able to read that, but I just figured I'd put something pretty up there and use the example I'm gonna give. But there was a case of 4-day-old ducks that were infected at a very low CT, so high viral load, high mortality, and 4 days old. And so, we're all looking at each other like, holy crap, like how does this happen? The maximum incubation period for AI, they used to say it was 21 days. They officially changed it to 14 days a few years ago. And then, we've been saying since the beginning of 2022 that, maybe 7 to 9 days, which we felt was pretty legit. But we had heard from some other states, and they're like, we feel like it just has to be much shorter. And I was like, I don't know. But when you have 4-day-old birds, obviously it's shorter. There was no question they were infected, so it's not like it was picked up environmentally. And that's the reason there's so many orange ones, is because they had sampled them a couple days in a row, and then we went back and sampled them again because we were trying to learn some things from this case in particular. I think there's an individual at the ADDL who's going to do some immunohistochemistry to see specifically what tissues were infected with that virus. But so, 4-day-old ducks, we're looking at each other like, okay, is there vertical transmission? There's not supposed to be vertical transmission of AI because frankly, the eggs are not supposed to hatch if they are infected. Is the hatchery contaminated? Because clearly they had to be infected basically at day 1, unless the incubation period is a day. And so when we got the genomics back on this one, it showed that this company got it from another company, from another farm. And we don't share a lot of these specifics because we don't want to promote finger pointing or feelings of bitterness or whatever, even though it's often no one's fault. But it was another farm about 2 miles southwest of these 4-day-old ducks. And so I pulled the wind speed and direction data for the days that those ducklings would have been alive. And so basically on, I would make sense to you guys, you don't know when they were placed, but, there was a couple of days, the day that they were placed and the next morning after, that the wind speeds were sustained at like 25 to 30 with gusts up to 40 miles an hour, and they were in the northeast direction. And so it's cases like that, and I'm just like, this, it had to have blown from, and that other farm, you know, you wonder, all right, this is where the genomics say it came from, but, you know, that farm did not do, they didn't do landfill, for disposal, so they weren't, you know, trucking their carcasses, up or down the road. You know, they did on-site burial there, and so I really think that the wind was blowing and it just seeded the environment, whether that was with contaminated feathers, dust, whatever the case may be. So that's, you know, not proven, but it certainly seems like a very likely scenario. And that's, you know, 2 miles, not 80 yards, which is kind of what the maximum in what's currently published shows. So anyways, just one case, and of course we look at all of these and try to learn some things, but sometimes it's hard actually when you're dealing with this many cases. And they're happening in such quick sequence that there's not a lot of change in the virus, and so you become less certain of the directionality of the spread of this virus when there's just not that much change. We rely on kind of those stair-stepping of changes of nucleotides in the sequence to help us know which direction it's moving in, kind of who spread it to who. So our on-the-ground response, and I just stole a couple of these pictures from Dr. Strausser. So this, it was supposed to be an analogy that like they were, you know, the on-the-ground response is from sunup to sundown, and I'm like, that's just silly because it actually started at dark 0:30 and, you know, ended way after dark. So, yeah, exactly. There is a sun and they sell it sometimes. So a frosty morning pulling up a driveway, and I think that's actually a burial site in the bottom picture, but it still looks pretty. I like that. Well, I guess I should mention something about on the ground. So we, much to the surprise and maybe criticism, or just you guys are crazy, did not ask for any USDA assistance on the ground. Now, of course, we utilized, or there were teams deployed to us virtually that did a lot of the administrative work in the USDA system, right? So there's a lot of data entry, a lot of uploading of documents, a lot of analysis of data, putting together drafts of, you know, situation reports that are for federal or for trade purposes and those types of things. So plenty of USDA folks deployed to us virtually from numerous states, anywhere from probably 10 to 20 at a given time. But on the ground, we did not request any. Now, there did end up being 3 individuals, one who was deployed because we had requested some foam concentrate that we use for depopulation from the National Veterinary Stockpile, and they needed someone to oversee its presence and I guess confirm the amounts that were there or not there. So that was that individual's job. And then 2 additional individuals who helped to verify the measurements of barns, because compensation for some parts of the response are tied to the dimensions of the barns themselves. And so while we had provided either like blueprints of the barns and or referenced county parcel data, which specifically gives the dimensions of the barns, there was a need for someone from USDA to do it. And so about 10 weeks into the event, that started happening. So that was the on-the-ground presence from USDA. But the vast majority was all done by our staff. And in Indiana, I just feel like that has served us well and worked best. We have great relationships with our poultry companies across the state, certainly in northern Indiana as well. And so it's just really handy to work with familiar faces and for that to not rotate throughout the incident and all of those things. I mean, we are subject to the same frustrations with rotating people who are deployed virtually. You know, we got to answer a lot of the same questions multiple times and, you know, change who we're emailing stuff to, every couple weeks. And so, you know, we hope to make it as consistent as possible for our producers and have no problem being their friend and the person who's gonna keep them in line and doing everything appropriately. So, yeah. No regrets there, even if people think we're crazy.
Quick, just to elaborate on USDA, to their credit, offered their assistance in various ways multiple times. We were quite aware of what they were able to offer us in assistance wise. And, you know, I kept circling back to them saying, I don't have any active requests, right? So as the incident is playing out, you know, our folks make requests up the chain and eventually they would get to me and I didn't have any. Yeah, folks were tired, but they were, you know, we're balancing that with, it's not zero effort to bring USDA in either, right? It's actually a lot of work to bring USDA in. And so constantly looking at what the return on investment would be in bringing those folks in. And that was sometimes a day-by-day assessment
It was, yeah.
of where we're at, mid-November especially. We were questioning a lot of things in life, and so but they did make their willingness to assist abundantly clear several times, and they were getting a lot of pressure to ensure that we were aware that they were willing to assist us as well. So, and then like Maria alluded to, those 3 positions that were on the ground response from USDA, simply the state was not allowed to perform those duties. So measuring barns nor babysitting foam, we were not allowed to. Because we had folks in that area that could have done either of those parts, but we were not allowed to do that. So the measuring of barns really caught us off guard, to be quite frank. That because those barns hadn't been measured in some official capacity that we were unaware of, all the flat rate payments were not being paid. So it took USDA 10 weeks to identify that the barn measurements weren't being validated, which we didn't know was a process. I'm not sure it was a process, but now it is. And so they held that up. And then finally, when that came to light, we're like, sure, great, let's get people out here to do that because our producers want paid. And that's a big deal. We've had a few independent producers, which adds another wrinkle kind of to the whole piece where the cash flow is tough. You know, when they don't have an integrator standing behind them to assist in that process. And so it was just a wrinkle that we didn't anticipate. It was later in the game than we would have ever wished to occur. I believe they are nearly current on measurements, if not completely current on getting the barns in. Fortunately, they were able to find someone who is relatively local. So they brought in someone trained out of Ohio over to do that, which is great. We've actually worked with her in other instances across the state. But at the same time, we also knew there was going to be incredible sensitivities around these folks being on these farms. Even if they're just measuring barns, some of these farms had already been restocked, right? Or had already been cleaned and fully disinfected and environmentally sampled. And now they want to bring someone on to measure the barn. And there's sensitivities.
And they have to go inside.
And they have to go inside
to
too.
identify areas that are not reimbursable for virus elimination compensation. So if it's, you know, a bathroom or whatever type of a room that's in there that it does not qualify, you have to know that. So they did have to enter the barns. So again, giving USDA credit, one, they knew how sensitive we were about this, about individuals outside of our agency being on the ground. And so they kind of let us do some picking of folks who were going to be deployed, which was helpful. And the main person measuring the barns is someone we've enjoyed working with in the past for sure. So we really didn't have any qualms, but we had said, like, let us know when you're going to get started because we need to communicate so that we know where you're going to go and who you're going to go to first. And we need to set some ground rules for, you know, how much downtime between companies and also in what order to go farm to farm. You want to obviously go, you know, cleanest to dirtiest. And so kind of establishing that. Well, somehow that didn't get communicated. And so the individual, I think just trying to be proactive and to get it done, reached out to the first company, and that did not go well because we had not given them a heads up because we thought we were going to have time to discuss. And so one of the leadership individuals for this company called me fairly irate at this prospect. And I was like, we can chat through it and we'll figure out a good, a good order to go in. But yeah, it's just not that, everyone's used to who they're communicating with and how the incident's going. And so for someone to say, I'm with USDA and I need to come onto all of your premises and go in the barns, was not received well initially. Everyone ended up, it all worked out just fine, but. Okay, do you have anything else? Okay, very good. So, not.
Because, just like any kind of practice, or, okay, I got to talk something.
You can always go.
But, just like your vet practices and farms and businesses, I mean, you're basically taking your clients and turning them over to somebody else every week, a new person. I mean, you want to really do that to your clients. So we consider, all these are our clients and we want to take care of our clients. So Indiana has a pretty different approach than some other states. And they're just, just let the feds do it, but obviously you're releasing your clients to who knows what or anything else, or your farm or business say, oh yeah, we're going to change our workers every week, and all the training and contact and who knows what they're saying and all that. So yeah, it's a client focused approach that BOA has always traditionally tried to do throughout all our history, recent history.
Yeah, I
You can
mean,
all see that, man, what kind of disaster would it be? But it takes a big commitment for our staff.
yeah, I mean, I have so much respect for so many people on our team for everything that they sacrificed for, days on end, and they would get home at 2 a.m. and that's when they have to send all their case documents because they gotta wake up at 5 to, go to the next farm. And, yeah, it was a battle. I think we all checked in with each other a lot. But yeah, hours were long. Sorry, I'm looking at Patrick and he left. Patrick sent me, memes about every day to make me laugh. And they did. You're a good meme finder. I appreciate that. We felt the support. Fortunately, all the growers, there were a couple that were cantankerous a couple of times, but man, did we have great growers up there, which also makes it unfortunate, but very compliant folks, just want to, try to get things done and do it the right way. And of course, the companies as well came with a lot of preparedness and competency of being flexible and bringing resources to bear. So in the midst of all this, you try to find the good. And so I think I found a lot of gratitude in that because it could be a lot worse. And so we're blessed with those relationships and some great people up there. The other thing that did make it, I wouldn't say challenging, but just added another layer is that I think nearly 100% of the growers were Amish. I don't know if there were any that were not Amish.
I can't think of any.
Yeah, and so, your ability to text is not always there. We did a lot of faxing. I now have an app on my phone, the fax app, it's very nice. So that I can upload documents directly to that app and get them faxed to folks for signatures or information or whatever. So it just can add some challenges for the communication piece when you're trying to be as efficient as possible, so.
So you really have to thank the board too for the commitment through the state veterinarian throughout the years and governor and legislature to staff us appropriately that we can handle this kind of times. And that's the sad scenario in a lot of states. Whether you just go to Illinois,
They're better.
They are better.
they're better now, but only have 2 or 3 people in the whole entire state in their state veterinary staff. So they gotta ask the federal government. So thank you again for the support the board gives us.
Yeah, the ability to have field veterinarians across the state and animal health specialists is huge. It made this response go so much more efficiently, I believe, and I think, we're glad to serve in the capacity. We would like a few more hours of sleep, but,
Now, Ty, don't try to steal any of our people, but we get, what's amazing from my standpoint, because obviously poultry and avian are my passion, but to see office people, can I go out there with that avian team and do environmental sampling? And we're like, well, yeah, and dairy people, been here for many years. Tricia says, can I go out? Can I go out and do this? You know, I'm like, yeah.
They're quite literally out there as we speak.
Yeah.
Safeway barns, right? So we have.
Normal people that are down through our
7 barns.
administrative office, usually on their computers or something else, administrative duties, they won't go out there, so. Yeah, don't try to steal their people.
Well, just, I was gonna wait till the end, but to kind of segue off of that, you know, where I work at, we deal with many states. And there is Indiana and there's everybody else, because, you know, you heard Dr. Cooper's, you know, the lateral spread, high probability of airborne, dust spread, all that type of stuff. You know, it's not just a chicken farm. You have rolling trucks, you have chick deliveries, you have moving pullets, egg deliveries, liquid egg, employees, all that stuff. And to just get a heads up, you know, of a potential zone, you get that quickly with here in Indiana. Other states, you don't learn about it until after the fact in the same industry. And a lot of cases like, well, we just had a truck roll by here, you know, and it just, you can just imagine that, but cannot say enough thank you to everybody here on the staff, because I know in some of the other animal divisions, you didn't sign up for this.
I'm sure in the job description, there's a thing at the bottom. This is not an all-inclusive list.
But, you know, and then you have to keep in mind, the peak was in holidays, Thanksgiving, where you're looking forward to getting with your families, and that's the story we haven't heard. I'm sure there was some missed Thanksgivings or some delayed Thanksgivings or quick eat and go, and same thing with Christmas and all that. Cannot say thank you enough. You guys set the bar, and you talk to the other states, they know it. Thank you.
I don't know that we would all be so willing and chipper most days if, you know, we weren't serving such a great and cooperative industry. So we much appreciate that. You know, you mentioned notifications of zones and suspects and confirmed cases. What was great is that in those control areas, besides, you know, a number of independents, there were 13 different companies. Now, some of them just had, you know, a few farms, others had over 100 farms and zones. But what everyone was willing to do is know exactly where the farm was. So every time there was a positive, every night, you know, I would drop pins and send to the group text messages where the new positives were. And everyone was on board with sharing. Now we did identify species, we didn't identify companies. Now, some of them, it kind of narrows it down pretty significantly, but no one cared. Everyone wanted to know, and everyone was on board with that type of information sharing, which I think just makes it all the better so that they can try to avoid the area or make decisions relative to placements and those types of things. So that really helps when everyone wants to be transparent, and that way we can help then facilitate spreading that message and not having to worry about confidentiality. So that I think worked very well. And yeah, anytime we had a positive, I think there was one night maybe that I was looking at Denise, so she's not there. One night when maybe we didn't send out a situation update and it made the list the next day. But every night we would get an email out to the industry with, you know, what the newest case was. And usually hours before that, we have already told the local companies, you know, where the positives were for the day. So, yeah, I think that part is very important and meaningful, because it's not just about being nosy, they're actively making decisions based on that information. So, depopulation and disposal, not gonna share a lot of pictures of that, certainly not of depopulation, but just wanted to provide the methods that were used during this current outbreak. So quite a bit of cervical dislocation, containerized CO2, water-based foaming, and some VSD+. I have not kept a tally of exactly the time from presumptive diagnosis to depopulation. There was a ton of them that happened the same day. Almost everything else happened the next day. There were a few that took a few days for varying reasons. But they were definitely within that, what is now the 24 to 48 hour goal to depopulate after a presumptive positive. So, it's a lot of work, and especially if the same company had multiple positives that day, trying to get the people and resources to each of those farms, either at the same time or in sequence, was certainly a lot of work. And then disposal methods, part of this is why we've been able to get through the incident so quickly is that when you're not, so we didn't do much composting. We did composting on 2 sites, so not a lot of carbon hauled in all over the place. We did a lot of landfill burial and a lot of on-site burial. And so once they're buried, then disposal is complete versus having to do, a few weeks of composting or a month of composting essentially. And so that really speeds up the timeline for everyone. So we were lucky. We really did not think that on-site burial would be an option at nearly as many sites as it was, just because typically in Indiana, you run a map from Web Soil Survey and you look at the water tables and the soil types, and that algorithm that they have built into that system lets you know if burial is a suitable option for a mass carcass disposal scenario. And so we found a number of farms that had the green light, if you will. And so then Dr. Trainer on our staff would produce a map with the appropriate setbacks from the buildings, the roads, the wellheads, and kind of X marks the spot for where they should dig. And so the companies and farmers were always super excited when they could do on-site burial versus having to do the landfill thing. So in the bottom left, that was a farm that did landfill. So you see the dumpsters there. They were, every dumpster was lined with those BioZip type liners. And so those liners each cost around $600 or $700 for one bag. And so the company that was predominantly used in this case is now warehousing those bags in Indianapolis for us because we needed so many of them. So yeah, quite an expense just to even get those lines, but you do feel so much more comfortable about the transit then, because they zip and they're just super sturdy. And then we always had a BOA person, oftentimes at the farm, depending on if someone qualified or that we felt was going to do a good job, to clean all of those trucks moving off. And then we always had someone at one of, did we do a total of 3 or just 2? Okay. I knew another one was being talked about, but we did use 2 landfills predominantly, and we would always have a BOA person there to clean and disinfect the trucks coming off as well, which we got raving reviews from the BOA staff who cleaned their trucks. It's like, that's a man full-time job. I don't think that they want to do that.
And traveling on Dr. Whirling's pre-approved truck route.
Oh, yes, so for every single route from a farm to a landfill, yes, Dr. Whirling put together the truck route to avoid as many stocked poultry premises as possible. So early on, we were sharing those with everyone as well, all the companies and producers, so that they knew the exact route and what times, so that, if that was largely going to happen in the morning, they would not do their feed deliveries that morning, or they may take other enhanced measures. But then we had stuff moving to the landfill every day. And so it wasn't sustainable, but early on we were trying, and I think folks appreciated it. But then no one complained when we stopped, because I think they fully recognized that it was just to each, everyone for themselves kind of thing. But
Fun fact, getting trucks out of that neighborhood without passing a lot of poultry is really hard.
try to minimize it. Yeah, it's tough because you can try to add a whole bunch of other considerations in, like, well, these birds are going to slaughter tonight, so they're not as, big of a risk as the ones that were displaced or whatever. But that type of information for 574 farms is not something that you can really work into your algorithm when you have 27 other tests to do. 27 is probably an underestimate for you, Dr. Rowland. Yeah, the composting on those two sites and then the incineration for the backyard blocks. So, a lot of landfill, a lot of burial. Thanks to Becky for your work over the years with the landfills. I feel like that likely contributed to their willingness to accept. Yes, we were just very pleased that they were willing to play. So. Speaking of environmental sampling, and these are some of our office folks, some of them in those pictures that wouldn't normally be out deployed, but yeah, just fun pictures. I think the top right and the lower left were actually from yesterday. And then, yeah, that middle one was, I'm not sure when, but not as recent. It has Karen in it.
Last week.
Okay, there we go.
We have a propensity to find very, very cold days to environmentally sample and very wet days to environmentally sample, so.
Yeah, I heard there was one day there was also, there was another student that came along with, I think Shelley and Jenny, and they were like, yeah, I don't think she's gonna go into this line of work now. Long days, walking barns.
It was raining all day, so.
Yeah, there you go.
We were quite wet.
So where are we in this response? So depopulation and disposal is 100% on all farms. 71 of the 80, so this is just the 82 commercial. So 71 have completed all of their cleaning of their barns. 67 of them, or 82%, have completed disinfection. We've environmentally sampled 56 of those sites, which is crazy. That happened. Brady Harden on our team has been master scheduler and preparer of getting around to all of these farms. It takes a lot of logistical work to kind of put a schedule together and get a number of people signed up and all the materials and all the submission forms. So she's been doing a great job at that.
For perspective, last Monday, we did 18 farms in a day. So we had 22 BOA people up there on 2 separate teams. We're actually utilizing a software to do route optimization to get us from farm to farm in the shortest amount of time, because it's all over the place, right? And so trying to use our time wisely, it takes about a half hour to 45 minutes ballpark per farm, depending on if it's, it does make a difference if it's a layer or if it's a duck barn. Duck barns can go pretty quickly because there's less equipment in the middle of the barn, so we can do our loops pretty quickly. It takes a little longer in the duck or layer facility, but just a little bit of perspective on one of those lines.
Yeah, and all of these layers are, they're all cage free. Most of them, if not all, are free range, although they have been confined since before the outbreak started, just due to the risk of HPAI outside. But yeah, I mean, so you walk in and it's all aviary equipment, so nest boxes and perches and feeders and waters, and so navigating around that equipment and trying to sample, get a good even sampling can take some work and some climbing. So. And then, so we've approved almost half of the farms to restock, and almost a quarter of them have already restocked in the past week or two. So, and many more to come, and we have released all but one control area. We have a date for its release of January 27th, which we just got last night after they met some critical steps. So that was our last farm, last control area, and I mean, you know, for 3 months and 82 control areas and now only having one. I mean, it may have looked, I mean, 82 cases or 84 cases in a quarter. I mean, that it doesn't look good, right? I mean, across the nation, right? You're like, what is going on in Indiana? We kind of feel like we crushed it, frankly. Because, I mean, it was challenging, but I feel like it was efficient, and I mean, to go as quickly as we did, and what we feel like were quality, you know, and complete steps throughout, I think we did okay. So
We are currently trying to balance the narrative of let's still be concerned that there is virus in the neighborhood. Like, let's not let our guard down yet. But at the same time, we are making a lot of progress through these impacted farms, right? So we've been watching this kind of behind the scenes pretty frequently, and I mean, we've been trending pretty quickly through these through these various response steps. But we're trying to find the right balance of how we tell this story. Likely there'll be more, we'll say, storytelling once that last control area is released. Kind of an update of where things are up in that neighborhood, because it's not all the industry from the outside sees is the positives and when they break. And so we want to come back and say, well, okay, they are making it through the process. We are getting them restocked in a timely manner. So
Yeah, when I say we crushed it, I mean the collective we.
yeah, the big guy.
The industry, and BOA, and yeah. That's my last picture. This was, also Dr. Strasser sent me this picture on December 18th, and she was like, I think this means it's a good sign. Have I missed anything, friends?
Yeah, if I could comment briefly, yes, you indeed crushed it. Single one of you, it was, I mean, the scale of this and the potential for, I mean, like you say, it's still a lot of farms, but you found, I hope, is the edge of it is just stunning, and so we really appreciate all that you did, just all of you, just all the hours. It was hard to like just sit there and know, oh, I know people aren't going to sleep and they're not going to Thanksgiving and yeah. So thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the support.
And the lab too.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, 16,000 samples. That's
Yes.
crazy. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Even just as Dr. Bowman will say, it's not really the PCR running itself, like they have that nailed down. It's all the accessioning and the forms and the reporting and, yeah, it's a lot of work. And then of course, they ran every Sunday, so, you know, a staff of folks has to. Yeah, it was a lot, but yeah, we felt the support too from you, Becky, and the industry, and you, Ty. I feel like maybe not over the past couple weeks, but up to then we were communicating about daily, so. Everyone apprised.
All right. I guess I have one question, not trying to minimize all the hard work and the feel good that you're having right now, but have you been getting much information from various wildlife services to know, you know, we're only about a month out before we're gonna see wild birds moving back the other direction on the flyways, as far as what populations and which flyways we potentially need to be vigilant about for the coming spring?
I don't know that I've received specific updates, especially about the kind of reverse migration, if you will. I assume that we're gonna be dealing with it in all 4 flyways and to be on the lookout. They had early on, it did help us early on when they, you know, migration started early, and based on some of the black vulture die-offs, and what was the other? Vultures, oh, the blue-winged teals. They had been following those in a longitudinal study, and so Wildlife Services and frankly, Carol Cardona up at the University of Minnesota, she had called me and she's like, it's coming early and it's coming for Indiana. Darn, was she right? You know, we try to warn some people, but I mean, there's so many, you know, cry wolf situations. I mean, we look at this birdcast maps, which show just millions of birds migrating overhead, and you know, you can scare yourself into like, all right, today's the day, or next week we're all gonna get AI, and so it's hard to sometimes know for sure, but I'll tell you that Carol has never called me out of the blue to tell me that it was coming for us. And then it did the following week, so.
I will say our DNR is actively looking and investigates die-offs if they're of substantial size. It takes more than just like 1 or 2 birds for them to start investigating, but they are noticing or have noticed sandhill cranes coming back through. They're definitely in Jackson County right now. They estimate, one sighting they counted 4,000 and one they estimated 4,000. They're in total they're guessing around 20,000 sandhill cranes moving through right now. They are not noticing high mortality this year in them, nor are they noticing a lot of sick ones or any sick ones. So that's a plus. Why they were impacted last year, I'm not sure. Well, or that was still this year. whatever year it was. It's actually a blur. You know, I don't know that we'll know or how it kind of picks a species or a breed and kind of runs with it in that year, but they are definitely moving right now. The black vultures was definitely an oddity this past year. That is unusual. I don't know that many people were upset with them dying, but they definitely were succumbing to that, and that's not typically a species we always see succumb to influenza since they're predominantly a scavenger. So.
Yeah, DNR, obviously DNR is a huge agency, but the pieces of the agency that BOA works with have been really fantastic partners. They're very responsive, extremely communicative, and keep us up to date on what they're seeing and their sample results and those types of things. And same for wildlife services too. But yeah, shout out to DNR.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Cooper? If not, I just wanted to extend a very heartfelt thanks on behalf of all the board. I know it's already been stated, but it is not lost on me that the number of farms within all those circles to keep that at the number around 80 was an unbelievable task and challenge. And so we very much appreciate all the hard work, long days, short nights that went into this. And I will have my fingers crossed for you that we have a quiet spring to allow you a little bit of respite.
Appreciate that.
Much appreciated.
And may this never happen to this mine next year. We'll be there for you though.
And also thanks to all the other divisions, whether it be dairy or animal, that chipped in to help out with this.
It's an all hands on deck.
Okay. All right. Nothing else? We'll move on to the meat and poultry division.
Dr.
Thank you for allowing me to present and stand up for Dr. Sir. She's unable to be here today, so I'm happy to give you a report for Meat and Poultry Division and a little bit of what we've done in the last quarter and just summarize a little bit of what we've done the past year. I tend to kind of jump around, but you have the Cliff Notes version, and I'm going to go over some topics and highlight some things. So last year was a busy year. We did have our civil rights audit in April. Every 3 years, we have an ongoing cycle of an on-site audit with the USDA FSIS, so they were here in June. It did not time well with the federal furlough, so we never really got that official letter of we passed, but all news was good news, so we think we are in good standing. And that is in combination enrolled right into our self-assessment, which we are currently working on to prove that we continue to be at least equal to the federal regulations. We hope to anticipate completion before the end of January. And we are also in the middle of our financial audit. So lots of behind the scenes running around with information and data gathering for our whole team there. I did attend our ASMID, our Association of State Meat Inspection Directors meeting. That was in Denver in November with the USAHA, and which was really awesome. I got to kind of join that last day with animal health programs and kind of got to experience their side of things. So it was really neat and eye-opening and realizing how similar we are when it comes to regulations and changes and things like that. Dr. Sir did attend virtually as well. Talking about retirements and changes, this is updated. So as of today, we have had 4 retirements in the past month, and we have 1 more on Friday. So that's going to be 5 of our employees retiring. One of those was our supervisor. So we had a promotion, which was great, but then we had another inspector position open. So far, since the beginning of December, we have hired 5 new inspectors and promoted that 1 additional supervisor. So that has been a lot of training and onboarding for all of us here in the central office. Many of our areas are shorthanded right now. This is due to not only our new hires and our changing of employments, but also long-term disabilities and other medical leaves that has caused our inspectors to be out of duty. And then the establishment has continued to increase their inspection duties. They're adding new products. We've had new establishments join our CIS program. We have a lot of new facilities still wanting to come under our program, so that makes things a little tight. With our new inspectors, their training and onboarding process is intensive, I guess I should say. It's a minimum of 6 weeks central office onboarding training before they can even do slaughter floor responsibilities on their own. So that is a lot with me. I meet with all of our employees right now. It says on a weekly basis, but when you got 5 new hires, it tends to be on a daily basis. Now we are doing virtual training with them. We are on the field training with them. After those 6 weeks, they typically can get their FSIS slaughter inspection training. They have to have that before they can or during their slaughter inspection duties in CIS establishments. But then we also have to take the inspection methods course. So I do then additional training when it regards to sanitation, HACCP systems, things of those nature to get them ready to take. It is a college level course. It was a little challenging for me as well, and I thought I was good at taking tests. So we definitely want to make sure, and it takes about 6 months until they're really prepared to take that IF course. So for areas such as our southern Indiana, where 90% of our inspected facilities are CIS, all of those new inspectors cannot be in those CIS facilities performing inspection duties until they've taken those courses, which takes 6 months. So it's very tough right now. We have been very thankful to pull from our field EIOs. I am actually covering inspection duties twice this week. Dr. Sir has been doing inspection duties, so it is all hands on deck trying to get these shifts covered. We are trying to provide the level of performance and attendance that we've done with all these facilities. We are trying not to change their schedules or shorten up their inspection capabilities, but it has happened in 2 of our areas just due to shortages. So we hope to be able to support them and get everybody trained so we can really finally maybe have a full staff. This quarter alone, we did have 1 custom exempt facility change ownership. That was Branchtown Locker. We had 2 CIS establishments withdraw from our program, which was a big hit to one of our areas. They were a very active program. They were sister establishments, so it was 1 owner with 2 separate buildings, but they had 2 separate inspection numbers. They were up north in Wakarusa and Bourbon, and they left our program because they wanted to export to other countries. So right now in FSIS regulation, it does not say you cannot export because you are same as federal inspection, but they have not allowed it. It's not been something that they've approved. So continue efforts and works there. With our ASBIN and state directors, we want to make sure our budget, those on-site audits and any regulations that are pertinent to export are described and explained to us in detail. Within the last year, we had 1 poultry custom exempt facility, which the industry was super happy about that one. We had 2 other livestock custom exempt. We had 2 new inspected facilities, and then we had 3 plants increase their inspection, 1 from custom exempt to inspection, and then 2, so we lost 2 CIS establishments, so we had 2 more join our program. This is very similar numbers from the past 2 years. We had 7 changes of last year between them. We had 2 facilities this year change ownerships. 1 plant did decrease their inspection inspection level from inspected to custom. 4 plants withdrew from our program. 2 were the CIS that went into export. 1 withdrew to do retail only, and 1 unfortunately had to close because it burnt down, so that was unexpected. Right now, we have 27 CIS plants. What's really interesting about that, and some of your numbers you can see at the bottom, is that we have 26 processing only facilities, and over half of those are CIS. So we are very happy to expand that product and that diversity where that product can go within our industry. Last year, again, we also had 27 CIS plants, and we probably have 5 more on the docket that want to transfer to CIS before the end of this fiscal year. You see we have some fast facts down at the bottom there with our processing numbers. And again, I feel like we've held very steady amid staffing discomfort and a little bit of pressure. January 2025, we had 132 establishments, and then I look back in 2024, we had 141. So very, very consistent within our industry. If you know somebody, we have 2 open inspector positions, 1 in the South area and 1 in West Central Indiana. So if you know somebody, forward us their information. We'd be happy to get them exposed to our industry and kind of help join our program. Right now, we have 41 inspectors. 1 is to be onboarded starting on Tuesday after MLK Day, but she is on this list. We have 7 supervisors, 2 EIOs, 1 compliance officer, 1 EIO and compliance officer, and then 3 of us here at the central office staff. Looking ahead to next year, we are planning to attend and speak at the Indiana Meat Packers and Producers Association meeting. That's going to be in March, and it's going to be a collaboration with Michigan. So it's always neat to meet different states and see how they handle a lot of what they do with inspection there. We will continue our training. Our EIOs do extensive HACCP training with our inspectors, making sure that they are aware and abroad of what they need to do to keep these establishments within regulation. And then obviously I'm going to continue trainings with our inspectors. And again, I say on a weekly basis, but I will just say on a daily basis, not only onboarding, but also preparing them for the IM course to get them within those CIS facilities. We do have 2 new facilities that are expected to join within this quarter, probably within the next 6 weeks. And then 1 plant is expected to join the CIS program ASAP as soon as they move. We have 5 current facilities that are working towards the CIS program and hope to join at the end of this fiscal year. We will continue to meet monthly with the IMPPA and the United States Department of Ag to support new and existing plants. And along those lines, with all this pressure and excitement, the Indiana Meat Packers and Producers Association released their Meat and Poultry Intermediary Lending Program, which is a $15 million grant from the federal government. They have worked with localized banks to match those funds and provide loans with low interest rates for new establishments to grow. Some of that information, even though it is released by the IMPPA, they want to make sure it is available to anybody. So if a federal facility wants to get this grant program, this loaning program, they are eligible to apply for that. But I am thankful here to answer questions from my mind.
Dr. Swatkatsky, I got a quick question. With like market pricing and stuff, have you seen as much interest with like phone calls and stuff, people wanting to inquire about the nut plants? Was that all pretty well stabilized and it's kind of the plants that are existing?
For what, sorry?
For like going under inspection and new plants trying to come in, is that demand still there like it has been? Or is it all pretty well leveled out?
Yes, I feel like when I first started about 5 years ago, when everybody wanted to open a new plant, they were like, well, we'll just go custom. I'm just here to help out my buddy. I'm just here to help out my neighbor. Now, when anybody wants to go under a program, they want to start inspection right away. So that is definitely still a very big demand. We have actually 2 of our custom exempt facilities within the past week get visited by our EIOs to come under inspection. So I think that is going to become more of the norm. And we're very happy and pleased to see that with our production only facilities, so much interest in the CIS program because they have no different regulations, no different permitting, everything's still with the state, and their product can now go across state lines and have this really new venture avenue. So yes, I feel that there is a lot more interest in state inspection. I think there's a lot of passionate interest as well for our state establishments to stay under state inspection and miss some of the federal regulations they're trying to look around to get their product to more producers and businesses.
Any other questions for Dr. Swatkatsky? Thank you.
He's ready to either push through 2 or.
All right. Any?
Neither one of our reports will be long.
I'll go fast.
All right, you know, I've been informed that lunch is ready, but I think we will push through and be efficient, keep the food warm. I'm assuming it's warm. All right, Patrick, Dairy Division.
No, traditionally my reports are really long-winded, so I'll try to keep it brief. So I like to use this report as kind of a highlight of the year for our surveys and check ratings. So at the top, you'll see the surveys are the kind of the in-house audits that we do. It's a pass-fail system, 90 is passing, 89 is failing. So sanitation scores, those are the scores that are given to the farms. So overall, an average of 92, that's great, that's passing. For the office itself, the enforcement score, that's a 98.7. And again, 90 is passing, so that's really, we're very proud of that number. And that comes down to our records and making sure that any enforcement issues as far as suspensions or product suspensions or temporary permits or anything were issued. So these are all items that are also included in our triennial evaluation from FDA. So it's important that these kind of stay where they are. The next bullet down is the check rating. So that's the one where FDA comes in, our regional hub specialist. She's based out of Illinois. She'll come in and she'll do a portion of a BTU, so for the farms, or she'll do some plants. Their scoring is a little different. an 81 or higher is no action needed. So sanitation score for her, the average was a little over 88, and our enforcement score was 95. So again, we were pretty pleased with that. Numbers are pretty well staying the same. We are seeing some growth in that we've got a lot of large projects under construction or in various stages of heading towards production. Most of them are very large as far as 75 to 125 cow rotaries. And we should see significant increases in our herd size in the next year to 2 years as those come online. One of the more interesting things was in the looking ahead, Nathan, the deputy director, just got back from NCIMS. So that's the National Conference of Interstate Milk Shippers, and that's our governing board that sets the rules for the PMO. And he's on that executive board, and the executive board meets after each conference with FDA to find out if FDA concurs or non-concurs with proposals that were passed during the conference. This also fell in line with the shutdown, so it got pushed back much farther than what it normally is. What was interesting about this one is normally this is kind of a rubber stamp meeting for the most part, no big deal, everything is concur. And they had a lot of non-concurs this year, so that's still going to be in the works, just with leadership changes and ideology changes in FDA. It looks like the overarching milk safety team could be a little more challenging to work with. So we're interested to see where that goes. And then at the bottom, in partnerships and outreach, one thing to note is we have secured our AFDO funds, so that's a grant for training. They've changed that a little bit as well too. Funds were more restrictive this year, so a lot of trainings that we would normally go to were denied, and the only thing that was approved were FDA ran courses. Traditionally, those have also been challenging because they select a site where they want to have, or a state where they want to have the course, and then they just ask the regional milk specialists that are close, hey, come teach about farms, hey, come teach about plants. So if we have a course in Arizona and we have a course in Maine, all the questions are answered completely different. So we had kind of started to go away from sending people to these, but it's our understanding now that they're building a team of trainers. So 3 regional milk specialists will travel around for that course, and we'll have the same trainer, which hopefully should standardize some of the answers. Indiana hasn't hosted a course for several years. The one course that I remember that we hosted, it's good they're changing it. It was very much, we would ask our 3 trainers a question, they all 3 would argue, they'd write it on a big Post-it note on the wall and say, we'll get back to you at the end of the class. And then at the end of the class, the Post-it was gone, and we didn't answer any questions. So we're hoping to see that as they do this, that those should be a lot stronger. And we have not had the turnover that meat and poultry has had, but we have had enough turnover that it would be good to get some of our newer folks to these trainings to get them the basis of what we're looking for. I think I've overstayed my time. Any questions?
Any questions for Patrick? Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Shipman.
Perfect, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to update the board. So a few things. We did find out yesterday that the USDA APHIS administrator, Dr. Mike Watson, will be retiring at the end of this month. That is a pretty significant update, as well as we found out yesterday that Chief Veterinary Officer of the United States, Dr. Rosemary Sifford, retired this past Saturday. So an interim has been named, Dr. Alan Huddleston. He is someone we have worked with before, has been within USDA for quite a while now. But those are 2 significant leadership changes that I don't know that folks saw on the horizon. I saw it on the horizon that were announced yesterday. So that's a pretty big deal that we will have to navigate if there's any potential impacts either to Indiana or kind of states as a whole on philosophically on how they continue to administer their programs across the country. I do want to do a very brief update on New World Screwworm that is still in the news. USDA has created a one-stop shop on their website, screwworm.gov. That is it's a really tough one. It's an all of federal government website where they bring in resources from veterinary services, wildlife services, as well as FDA and others. So if you're looking for information on screwworms, I would encourage you to go to that website, as well as the current detections in Central America and Mexico are updated there. So it's still within relative proximity to the Mexico border. That is still a big deal. The USDA estimates that incursion or infestation is what they call it into the United States would impact the U.S. livestock industry to the tune of about $100 billion if this group was to come in. So the multi-pronged approach, but the two at the top of the list are building a sterile fly breeding facility in Texas, a domestic one. There's currently one in Panama. That facility is producing 100 million flies a week that are distributed across Central America and Mexico. They're working to stand one up in Mexico as well, and then to build our first domestic production facility of these flies. That facility, when completed, would produce around 300 million flies a week. And that's currently estimated to cost around $750 million to construct. So as you can imagine, this is a pest that's not currently in the US. So there's pretty strict biosecurity measures around creating an intentional breeding facility of them in the US. So they're looking at space in or around actually an Air Force base in Texas to build this. So as well as access to runways, because that's how they move these flies around and disperse them. So just as far as what that looks like in Central America and in Mexico, they've documented over 110,000 cases in livestock, but also over 700 cases in humans of New World screwworm infesting them. So it is a big deal. It's something that's on our radar. FDA continues to issue conditional approvals. There's nothing on label in the United States for New World screwworm for the prevention or treatment of it. But yeah, USDA is conditionally approving and actually emergency use authorization for livestock and dogs currently, and I believe cats. So their website is updated, I wouldn't say frequently. When they have new approvals ready, it seems that they're doing it in relatively decent time. Every month or two, a new product comes kind of through the process. So I'm not going to pretend to get this all listed for you today, but just know that that website is updated as they are approving, either through emergency use or through conditional approval. Last, but certainly not least, I do want to kind of direct your attention to the annual report. One number that stands out to me is the number of hours that were dedicated to our HiPath response. I did ask our CFO to pull complete end of year numbers, and that number is even higher than the 18,400. It's about 20,700 hours spent managing those 110 detections. Just for perspective, that's about 10 and a half, nearly 11 full-time equivalents for the entire year spending time on HiPath. So pretty significant lift by the agency. I also like to remind folks, while the 110, 111, depending on the cutoff, is quite significant, and I don't want to, say that that wasn't a lot. We did maintain 93% of our flock stayed negative through 2025, right? So we do have a lot of birds, a lot of poultry premises, and a lot of them stayed negative. But the 110 did take a lot of our time to get those through that process. So with that, I will take any questions on either the annual report, my report submitted, or anything else.
Any questions, Dr. Schiff? All right. And I also would like to thank you for the annual report placemat. I think these are very concise, and they're a great way to highlight the great work that the agency is doing out there for us. It's hard. It's easy for those of us that are in the thick of it to lose sight of how lucky we are to have BOA. Once you talk to your colleagues in other states, it becomes very, very obvious. We're spoiled here. So,
And I would very much like to thank Denise because we didn't murder each other when we worked on it this year. And this is our first annual report working together on it, right? And so, no, I definitely appreciate that because without her, we would not be able to get this put together by any means. So,
and thank you, Denise, for the board. I'm not having to have emergency services.
I'm gonna wear this badge on.
We all do.
With that, I've got one small agenda item I'm going to insert before we choose our next meeting date. It is, while it is not required of this board, it is looked upon favorably if we provide some feedback on the performance of the state veterinarian. And so I would offer it up for any of the board to either put some comments on the record or make a motion that we could send up the chain, so to speak.
I'll just reiterate some of the comments I made with HiPath AI. Came on about a year ago and you're right smack dab in the middle of it. And in here later in 2025 and like I said before, it's Indiana and everybody else. And thank you for keeping that level and the communication with the industry and getting everybody to work together. And it's not just Bo, it is ADL and everybody else. There's so many people involved. So thank you for keeping that cohesiveness and teamwork together.
I would like to move that, as a board, that we recommend Dr. Shipman has exceeded expectations and shall benefit from any financial gains with exceeding his expectations.
All right. Thank you. All right, it's been moved by Tim and seconded by Dr. Gillespie that we forward on that Dr. Shipman has exceeded expectations for his job role and responsibilities, and that if there were any remunerations from the state that come with that rating, that he would be able to enjoy those with other state employees. Gary,
Vote.
we'll take a vote.
Vote on the motion. Dr. Armstrong? Keith Beard?
Aye.
Tim Rice?
Aye.
Craig Roberts? Tracy Gillespie?
Aye.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ty Harberger?
Aye.
Virgil Bremer?
Aye.
And Dr. Ragland?
Aye.
Dave Hart?
Aye. All right. With that, we have one other stated piece of business to conclude, and that is setting the date for this board's next meeting. Proposed date is April the 14th. I'll look at your calendars and see if that works.
Dr. Cooper, if it all works out, the world is spinning the way it should, we have the peak conference that week. We always call it.
All right. Well, I don't hear any objections other than we may have some conflicts with our feathered friends. So we'll go ahead and set that date, April 14th. Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing nobody jumping up and ready to state anything, I will call this officially adjourned.